Welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at mouse events, and mouse events are always fun where we look at mouse over, mouse out, and there's a whole bunch of different mouse events that we can track. So first for mouse events, there's mouse over. This is an event that's fired when a pointing device is moved onto the element that has the listener attached onto it, or one of the children. So you can see here in the example on the right-hand side that we're adding an event listener. So the same way as we were adding the click events, we add the event listener and we've got mouse over. So this is anytime the mouse is over, so it's taking the mouse position into consideration, and any element that it's over, it fires off the event. And then mouse out is the opposite. So it's an event that's fired when the pointing device is moved off the element that has the listener attached to it. So when we open up Mozilla Developer Network, so they've got some examples of this where they've added to the element test the mouse enter. So whenever the mouse enters, it updates the event target style color to purple, so the text will turn purple anytime we're over this unordered list. And there's also a timeout. So they've added in a timeout that will, after 500 milliseconds, will update the color and reset it back to its original color. So it'll only be purple for the time when it's on top of that particular element. And there's also have mouse over as well. So mouse enter, mouse over. And there is a slight difference. So mouse enter is executed only when the mouse enters the element, whereas mouse over executes every time the mouse is moved and the cursor is over the element. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve, and typically I usually use mouse over and then mouse out to detect when the element is left, and you can use combinations of either one of these. And the same thing as when the mouse over, they've got a timeout here that resets the color. So when mouse is over, it's going to be orange, and when we leave, it's going to reset the color back to the original color. There's also one for the mouse out event. And the mouse out event is very similar to mouse leave. So this gets executed once the cursor moves out, and mouse out will be executed every time the cursor is moved off the different list item. So this one gets moved off the unordered list, and then the list items are for mouse out. So there is a difference here between the mouse over and mouse out, and the mouse leave and the mouse enter. So those are four different types of mouse events. You can see there's quite a bit more as well. So you've got all of these different options, and the click events are mouse events as well, because it's your mouse that's doing the clicking, and there's also the double click. And we've already gone over quick click quite extensively. There's also mouse up and mouse down as well. So whenever the mouse is down, so whenever the pointing device button is pressed on an element, that will invoke this particular function. So there are some options, and depending on the situation, you can make use of the different ones. So in this example, what I'm going to show you is how we can set the mouse over and the mouse out on elements. So within our unordered list, where we can listen for the different events, the mouse events, and then update adding in classes and removing classes depending on where we are. And we're going to loop through all the list items within the list. So let's open up the editor, and we're going to select the list items that we have. And we do have some list items here, so let's first get our list items. We'll call it LIS, and using the document. And we got to select all of them, so I'm going to use query selector all. Selecting all the elements that are list items, and just refresh it just to make sure that I do have the proper node list. So I have all 7 of them within the node list. And we're going to use a for loop to loop through, looping through while s length is less than, and we need to increment x. And then within the loop, we're going to add the event listeners to all the elements. So we can list out the element by doing a console log and list lis x as the index. So that will list out all the different elements that we have. So now whenever we hover over them, we want to add in the mouse events. So taking the list element, adding an event listener, and then adding in mouse over. We're going to invoke an anonymous function. So whenever mouse is over, we're going to select the current active element, select its class list, and add the class of red. So I only have that one class, so that's why I keep using that one. And of course, you probably have a little bit more variety within your projects. Also, within the list item, we're adding another event listener. And this event listener is listening for mouse out because these are two separate events. So we're tracking them as separate events. And whenever this event occurs, we want to remove the class of red. So I think we're ready to try it. So you can see that whenever I hover over those elements, they're lighting up red. And we can even add even more into it where we can update the style and background color if we wanted to. So to make it stand out a little bit more, we'll turn it yellow. And then we'll set the background color to blank when we do mouse out. So now you can see them, they're getting highlighted as we hover over. So there is, of course, a challenge for this lesson. And the challenge is to do just what I just did, to highlight the elements within a list and turn the text color red when the mouse is over the list item and remove the highlight once it's off. And you can use the content below or you can use the default HTML file that we've been using earlier. So go ahead and try this out for yourself, and I'll do a quick run through of the solution for you. So the solution code was actually exactly what we had run through. Although we're updating and removing classes, you can also update and remove the background color if you don't have the class with the appropriate red color. So you could have done background or you could have done color red and updated that as well. So that's what I'm going to add in here. So in case we don't have the class, we can select the element using style and then color, and we'll set the color to be red. And you can also use the element object. So this is going to be referring to the same one as the instance. So it doesn't matter which one you use, however you access it, you can use this or you can use the object. It's referring to the same instance. And then whenever we move off of it, we want to just reset it back to black or whatever the default color is. So now we've got the same effect, and it's just a different way of writing it. So whatever way you wrote it, as long as you've got the right effect, then you have the correct solution. And you can also fire this on mouse enter, and it'll look roughly the same way. And it gets invoked whenever we're entering, and then there's mouse out, and there's also mouse leave. So there are subtle differences as described, but in this case, it looks roughly the same thing. It looks like it's doing roughly the same thing. So coming up next, we do have a challenge for you, and that's going back to those list items. So there's a more advanced challenge coming up in the next lesson.